if you're listening to this, just take a moment and think about the sheer toughness that's literally running through your DNA.
Yeah, and we're not talking about, surviving a stressful week at school.
No, not even close.
Yeah.
We're talking about surviving a 2.5 million year period of just global crushing cold. This is the ultimate survival story.
We're going to get into the Pleistocene epoch, but most people just know it as the Ice Age. And our focus is pretty simple. How did our earliest ancestors manage to not just what endure this planetary freeze?
But how did that very survival forge all the incredible skills, the engineering, the social bonds that really laid the foundation for modern life?
Right, because the environment they were up against, it completely rewired what it meant to be human.
When we say Ice Age, you have to get past that simple image of a little bit of snow.
Uh,
We're talking about a world where winters were drastically longer and temperatures just plummeted
Yeah.
way below anything we experience today, and it stayed that cold for thousands of years at a time.
Exactly. To really get it, you have to appreciate the sheer scale of the freeze. It started roughly 2.5 million years ago, and the most intimidating feature on the planet was the glacier.
And try to picture that scale. These are massive ice sheets growing across the northern continents.
Yeah.
Sometimes several miles thick.
Miles.
Yeah. If you were standing on top of that ice, the tallest skyscraper in the world today wouldn't even poke through the top.
And it wasn't static. It was billions of tons of frozen water, and it was moving slowly south.
Like the Earth's greatest heavy machinery.
It was an environmental sculptor. As that ice scraped along, it carved out deep valleys, it polished mountains, and it pushed these enormous boulders hundreds of miles from where they started. The entire map of the Northern Hemisphere was basically redrawn.
But I think the biggest change wasn't the ice on the land, it was the water that was missing from the oceans.
Yes. Because so much of the world's fresh water was locked up in that ice, global sea levels dropped by hundreds of feet.
And that drop is so important for understanding human history, isn't it?
It is absolutely crucial. When the sea level fell, huge areas of the continental shelf were exposed. It connected land that had been separated for ages. These land bridges were brand new highways for animals and for humans.
And the big one, the one that really matters for the story of human migration, is Beringia.
Beringia, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the landmass that connected modern-day Siberia to Alaska. It was this vast, cold, dry plain. Humans, following the migrating animals, used that bridge to walk from Asia into the Americas.
Which completely changed the population map of the world. It's just a wild concept that this huge human expansion was only possible because water was frozen.
And we know this, the temperatures, the sea levels, from scientists analyzing deep ice cores and old soil samples. They preserve the chemical signature of those changes.
So that brings us to survival. You couldn't live in that world just by picking fruits and nuts.
No, the food had to be mobile, packed with calories, and able to handle the frost. Survival meant aligning yourself with the giants of the Ice Age, the megafauna.
When we say megafauna, we mean massive creatures. The one everyone thinks of is the woolly mammoth.
Of course, over 10 feet tall at the shoulder, that thick fur and those incredible tusks that could be 12, 13 feet long.
But there were others too. The giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats.
Massive bison, woolly rhinos. And what's so interesting is that their size was actually a survival tool.
It's just physics, really.
It is. A bigger body has less surface area compared to its mass, so it loses heat much more slowly. That bulk, plus all that fat, made them masters of the cold.
And that forced a total shift in how humans lived.
It did. We became carnivores in those northern areas. If you wanted to live, you had to follow the herds, learn their routes, and figure out how to hunt them.
The risk in hunting them must have been astronomical.
Huge risk. But the reward was just as big. Taking down one mammoth wasn't just dinner, it was a resource jackpot that could feed dozens of people for weeks.
So this is where teamwork becomes everything. You couldn't do it alone with a pointy stick.
No, you needed complex planning, a coordinated group, and a deep knowledge of the terrain. They weren't fighting fair either. They used the landscape itself as a weapon.
Driving them towards cliffs or into deep bogs, right?
Exactly. Trapping them where they couldn't move easily.
Yeah.
That kind of ambush takes real-time communication and some serious forward thinking.
And once the kill was made, the efficiency was just absolute.
Zero waste. It had to be. Every single part was used. Meat for food, fat for fuel, hides for clothing, bones and ivory for tools, and even for building. That one animal was your grocery store and your hardware store, all in one.
And that fat you mentioned, That was so important, wasn't it? It was fuel for their bodies, but also fuel for their technology.
Mm.
Brings us to fire.
Fire was everything. It was the absolute linchpin of survival. The single most important task for any group was just keeping a fire going.
Because starting one from scratch in those conditions would be incredibly hard.
Almost impossible. And fire served two vital functions. First, warmth, obvious but critical. And second, cooking.
Which makes food easier to digest.
Right. Cooking meat breaks down tough fibers. That means your body gets more calories out of the food with less effort. It's a huge energetic advantage.
But to use that fire and process those animals, you needed tools.
Effective tools. And the core technology of the entire era is about mastering stone, specifically a technique called knapping.
And knapping isn't just smashing rocks together.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's lithic engineering. You take a piece of flint or obsidian and you use these precise, controlled strikes to shear off flakes. The goal is to create an edge sharper than modern surgical steel.
That's a level of expertise that has to be passed down, right, from one generation to the next.
Absolutely. And you needed different tools for different jobs. Heavy hand axes, small sharp scrapers for hides, and of course, finely made spear points.
The spear points feel like a huge leap forward. They attach them to long wooden shafts.
Which gave them distance from very dangerous animals. They also made things like harpoons out of bone, so they were fishing in those cold rivers too.
And because the right kind of stone was hard to find in some places, every tool was precious.
You'd carry a good knife for hundreds of miles. It was your most important piece of survival gear.
Okay, so they have fire, they have tools, but they still need to get out of the wind and snow. A cave would be the best case scenario.
A cave is like winning the real estate jackpot. Instant protection.
But the herds move, and you can't always find a cave. So what do they do on the open, treeless plains?
This is where they became surprisingly sophisticated engineers. They used the bones of the animals they hunted.
So, mammoth bone huts.
That's exactly it. They used the massive ribs and the long, curved tusks to build circular frames for their huts.
That's genius. A sturdy frame you can put up pretty quickly.
And then they'd cover that frame with heavy animal skins and weigh the edges down with big rocks so the wind couldn't tear it apart.
What about the inside?
Inside was all about keeping the heat in. A central fire was always lit. They'd line the floors with grass or fur to get off the frozen ground. And living in close quarters meant they shared body heat.
And just as important as the shelter was what they were wearing, their clothing.
Clothing was just as much a piece of technology as a stone tool. You couldn't just drape a rawhide over yourself. It would freeze and crack.
So they had to figure out how to treat the skins.
They had to clean and cure them, often using things like animal brains or oils to keep them soft and flexible. And then they needed thread.
Which they got from the animals, too.
Right. They used sinew animal tendon. When it's dried, it makes this incredibly strong, high-tensile thread.
But the real game changer was the bone needle.
The needle was everything. Before that, you could only really lace hides together. A needle lets you actually sew. You can make fitted, tailored clothing.
And fitted clothing lets you wear layers.
Exactly. And the trapped air between the layers is what keeps you warm. It's a perfect natural insulator.
So they're making boots lined with grass, carcas with hoods to protect their faces from frostbite. It's a complete winter survival suit.
This ability to engineer clothing is what allowed humans to push into the absolute coldest parts of the planet.
So let's shift a bit from physical survival to, well, mental survival. It seems like all these challenges would have to speed up the development of language.
I think it's almost certain that it did. Survival demanded a huge cognitive leap. You had to move past just shouting a warning like, lion.
You had to be able to plan.
You had to plan. You had to talk about the past and the future. Something like, last year, the mammoths crossed the river over there, so this year, we need to be waiting for them on that ridge.
That's a complex idea. It requires a pretty sophisticated language.
It does. You need it to teach the next generation how to knap a spear point, how to keep a fire going in a blizzard. And sharing those stories, those instructions around the fire, it built incredibly strong social bonds.
An individual just couldn't survive alone out there.
Not a chance. You needed the group. You needed that collective intelligence. Language allowed them to store knowledge over lifetimes. That collective memory became their single most powerful tool.
And even with all of that, all this constant struggle for survival, they still made art.
Which is maybe the most moving part of this whole story. It shows that their lives were about more than just finding food.
We're talking about the cave paintings, right? Like at Lascaux.
Exactly. These vivid paintings of animals and hunters deep inside limestone caves. They made paints from minerals like ochre and charcoal and mixed it with animal fat.
It suggests they had rituals or maybe they were teaching things. It's more than just decoration.
Absolutely. They also carved these small, beautiful statues out of ivory or soft stone. It shows they had complex emotions, a sense of wonder, and a need to record their world.
So to wrap this up, the world they had mastered eventually just changed on them.
It did. About 11,000 years ago, the Earth started a major warming trend, the Great Thaw.
The glaciers melted.
They retreated, dumping all that water back into the oceans. Sea levels rose, swallowing the land bridges. The tundra turned into forest.
And that was a disaster for the megafauna.
Many of them couldn't adapt. The mammoths, the woolly rhinos, they went extinct. And humans, once again, had to adapt.
They had to start hunting smaller animals, gathering new kinds of plants. And this really marks the end of one era and the beginning of another.
It's the foundation of settled agriculture, of the civilization that we know today.
So what's the takeaway from all this? I mean, you can still see the marks of the glaciers in the landscape, in deep lakes and rounded mountains.
Yeah.
But the real legacy is inside us.
It is. We are literally the descendants of the ultimate survivors. The skills our ancestors were forced to develop, problem solving, cooperation, engineering, they didn't vanish when the ice melted.
They're the foundation of everything we do today.
They're the core foundations of modern technology and our ability to adapt to whatever the planet throws at us.
So as you look around at the world today, just think, how many of the problems we're trying to solve now are just new versions of the ones our ancestors already mastered? Problems of energy, shelter, and sharing knowledge. The tools they created in their minds are still shaping our future.
Good luck with your studies.